Shalom. Let me get straight into this lesson. I'm going to be going into Revelation. Let me go to it real quick. In fact, let me go here because I want this to be my screen shot to this lesson. But I'm going to be going into that great dragon in the book of Revelation 20, chapter 1. I'm going to show you what that means because most people, you Christians, you interpret that as being the spiritual being Satan. That's not talking about that. It's not talking about the spiritual demon as you know as Satan. Right? So let's get into this lesson. So what you have to understand is the history. If you don't understand the history of the Bible, you're not going to understand the mysteries as the apostles have taught us. And that's true. You know, if you don't understand the history, you're not going to understand the mysteries. It's just impossible. So you have to understand what was going on at this time frame, right? So when you read the book of John, you need to understand what time frame was that, what was going on, who was in power, right? What was the condition of our people? All this stuff matters. Let's go here. So Christians go here and they read everything in the Bible literal, and they don't have the discernment to understand what is metaphorically speaking, and then how to discern what this means. They don't know. They take everything, you Christians, especially Edomites, they take everything in the Bible literal because they don't got the spirit to understand and they unlearned. So let's start off here. So Revelations 20 and 1. And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. So this is represents confinement, captivity for the Edomites. It says too, and laid hold on that dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan. So this is when you people go into this mythological mindset because you see the word devil and you see the word Satan, and you only know one definition of what this means. You don't even know what the word properly means. So we're going to the word devil and Satan and bound him 8,000 years. So this represents captivity. The Edomites during the so-called Dark Ages, they had no influence, no power. They was pushed into the Caucasus Mountains and different other regions as slaves. So this is what this is talking about. So let's go here. Let me show you something. The devil and Satan, so you can understand what those words mean, because you only understand these words of what you've been taught in Christianity. You think anytime you see the word devil, you envision a guy with a red spandex suit on with a pitchfork, right? With hoof feet, with horns on his head. No. When you see the word Satan, that's what you think of in your mind. It's because you've been taught this. So when you actually go into the real meaning of the words, that's why you have to go into the etymology of words, the origin of words. It says right here, it says false accuser, devil, slanderer. It says prone to slander, accusely falsely. So it means slanderer. So false accuser. That's what the word actually means, right? Let's go back. And when you go to the word devil, Salak, I mean Satan, it means adversary, right? So it's adversary. So one who opposes another with purpose or act. Check this out. At the bottom, it says a Satan-like man, which would be the Edomites. The Edomites are the physical counterpart of the spiritual demon Satan manifested through the Edomites. Somebody got to fulfill these things through the flesh, and the Edomites are who creates the evil. I mean, they the one do the evil on earth. You know, you got you Jakes do evil too, but they're the king of evil. That makes sense. So now when you know what these words mean, it takes the witchcraft off of them. So let's go back here. So you know it ain't talking about what you know as a spiritual demon Satan. It says 3. Let's just click the whole thing. It says, and cast him into the bottomless pit. That don't See, you people go into that Greek mythology, which you've been shown in those images. I'm gonna get into that, right? So it's not talking about a literal dragon being tossed into a bottomless pit, and you people say that's Satan and shut him up and set a seal upon him. So during this time, during the so-called Dark Ages, when the Israelites ruled for over 1,000 years, these Edomites had no influence. They was in captivity. They was pushed into the Caucasus Mountains and other areas, and they was made slaves. That he should deceive the nations no more, till that 1,000 years shall be fulfilled. And after that, he must be loose a little season. That's going back into the Renaissance. These devils coming back into birth, being rebirthed with the Renaissance. When you go into the word Renaissance, that's what it means. So let's jump down to right here, 7. It says, and when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loose out of his prison, which we know that word Satan means adversary. It means the adversary, which is let's go to that 20 Revelation 27. So normal words probably mean embrace the witchcraft that you've been taught. It says adversary. Adversary. It says a Satan like man. So it depends on the context. Let's go back. And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan, which means the adversary, shall be loosed out of his prison. 20 and 8, Revelation 28, and shall go out to deceive the nations. This what the Edomites have done. How did they do this? I'm gonna get into that. All right. It says, which are in the 4 quarters of the earth. So through all 4 corners of the earth, Christianity, so-called white Jesus, all this stuff been taught. Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. So let's focus on this at the top. And shall go out to deceive the nations. Let me show you something. And these devils came back into power between the 16th century. It says right here, this during the Renaissance. And I'm going to go to a precept and break it down. It says this term Renaissance generally means rebirth. What was rebirth? That Greco-Roman system that was birthed back into the earth. And they pushed this throughout the 4 corners of the earth by the sword. So if you didn't convert to their Christianity, they'll put you to death. It says rebirth or revival, especially referring to a period of renewed interest in something, often art, literature, or culture, which would be the Edomite culture came back into power around the 16th century, give or take. Check this out. Historically, it specifically refers to the Renaissance period in European history. There you go, Edomite history, 14th through 17th centuries. It says a time of cultural and intellectual awakening characterized by a renewed interest in classical art, literature, and philosophy. So going back into all this Greek mythology, Roman mythology, that's why they named the days of the week after these Greek and Roman gods and this Norse gods and the months, so on and so forth. The whole system, the medical system, everything is through the Greek culture, which is be the Edomite culture. You got the Olympics. It goes on and on. The games, which is from Rome. Really, this system mirrors Rome, but it's all the other systems like the Babylonians, the Egyptians rolled into one system of Babylon, which means confusion, right? So this culture, the way you learn, the language you speak, the philosophies. So these philosophies would be likened to different doctrines. Primarily the dominant doctrine in the Americas would be Christianity, right? So let's get in. So we know Renaissance means rebirth. Let's go here. Psalms 58 and 3. It says the wicked are estranged from the womb. They go astray as soon as they be born, speaking lies. Let me go explain this to you. Because can't no baby talk, right? So we know this got a deeper understanding to this. Let's go here. Now, this is a multi-layered scripture. It says right here, number one, the wicked are estranged from the womb. So what Jake do, see, the Edomite will read this, or our people will read this because they don't know how deep the scriptures can go. And they'll vision this scripture as they'll see like a mother, womb or whatever, womb. They'll see a baby being born in their mind, and they think the baby can speak lies. Can't no baby talk. So, it says so let's get the clarity on this. So we know this going back into the Edomites when they came back into power. It says the wicked are estranged from the womb. This phrase means that the wicked are morally corrupt from the very beginning of their lives. So this would be from the beginning of their lives, right? And also from the beginning of their rulership. So when the Edomites came back into power, they was always corrupt. They was always the wicked. Esau was born a certain way. The Edomites are born a certain way. Can't nothing change that, right? Meaning that these devils cannot be reformed. And you Jakes are, you learning this the hard way. It says the term exchange, exchange suggests alienation. In this case, from God, truth, and righteousness. It says it's not necessarily a literal claim that infants commit sin at birth, but a poetic way to stress how early and deeply ingrained evil is in the Edomites. They talking about certain people. No. Check this out. It says they go astray as soon as they be born, speaking lies. This intensifies the image. The wicked start lying and deceiving from the beginning of their lives, beginning of their rulership, right? It conveys the idea that falsehood is natural to them, part of their character. So the Edomites, again, when they come into any kind of influence of power, they going to speak lies. They going to do deception. They going to be the wicked. There's nothing no one can do that. This is a way of saying that, right? But you have to understand it in a deeper way than you're reading it. It says, again, this poetic exaggeration to make a point. Wicked people are deeply committed to deception and evil. These are the Edomites, right? Literally breaking down the Edomites, right? So another layer to this is the wound, right? They come out, it says strange from the womb, right? There's so many ways you can parallel to that, so many different things. It says right here, in a metaphorical sense, the womb is a place where a person is enclosed, hidden, and not yet free. Going back into the Edomites being chained, a great chain represents them being in obscurity, not having any influence over anybody, and pretty much in captivity. But when they came back into power, they was able to influence the world, use the sword, right, which was their blessing, to make you believe all the lies that they had conjured up, and using that so-called white image, right? So this is something I'm gonna get into in my next lesson, because you know how time be flying. So let's go back. I'm not going to have time to get into this other thing, but I'm gonna do a part two to make this all make sense. But it makes sense right now, but I just want to put the cherry on top. So we know that you can't read the Bible literal, in every single situation. And some stuff is literal, some stuff is poetic, some stuff is metaphorically speaking. It's a lot of vastness to the understanding of the scriptures. Some stuff is prophecies, right? So it'll be times in the book of Psalms where David actually be prophesying on Babylon being destroyed, this Babylon. The prophets would do that throughout, Jeremiah. You had Isaiah. They talking about Babylon, right? Being destroyed. And then you'll link these up with precepts, the Revelations, the scriptures and Revelations, where it's talking about the dragons, which means a desert creature, a jackal, and you link that up to Isaiah, so on and so forth. It's a lot. So these Edomites, when they came into power during their Renaissance, which means rebirth, they deceived the whole world with this Christianity, with all their lies. It ain't just Christianity, it's everything. They lied about literally everything that you could think of. And then they influence your mind in every way, form, and fashion you don't even know. Hopefully this lesson was edifying. Call Hallah Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rachak, Kodash, Shalom.